I'm thinking of having her to marry my son. You can't have children, can you? That's why I was against the marriage, to marry to an older woman like you. My mother-in-law spoke these words with a smile, a younger woman sitting beside her. The most important person, my husband, just sat silently next to this young woman. I'm so fed up with his in-laws family. I had left in a huff, but to my surprise, I regretted it immediately and sought to reconcile. Regret fills me as I ponder on the disastrous choice I made marrying into such a family. My name is Olivia, and I am 38 years old. I met my husband, Sam, who is 8 years younger than me, through a friend's introduction. I hesitated to date him because of the age difference, but he passionately declared, "Age doesn't matter. I love the person named Olivia." And we began dating, which eventually led to marriage. About 6 months into our relationship, considering my age and the possibility of marriage, he decided to introduce me to his parents. His mother opposed our marriage because of the age gap. "I thought you'd bring a young, cute bride when you said you were introducing a woman you're considering marrying. Oh dear, 38 years old. Sam, I mean no disrespect, but reconsider. Younger women are better," she said to Sam in front of me. My father-in-law stepped in and said, "If Sam thinks it's good, then it's good, isn't it? Sorry about my wife's rude comments, Olivia." And we managed to obtain approval for our marriage. My father-in-law was a man who would diffuse the harsh words of my mother-in-law, giving the impression of a non-confrontational person. However, once we got married, he often turned a blind eye, which was disappointing. Sam's family was a well-known line of landowners in our small town, and my mother-in-law boasted about it endlessly. Even though, technically speaking, she was not a blood relative of the family, she had married into it just like me. This is an affluent family, and Sam, being the golden boy, has a dreamy, otherworldly charm. The man I was with before Sam was very frugal, which was a struggle, so Sam's generous and easygoing attitude toward money is quite appealing. Although my mother-in-law grudgingly accepted our marriage after being told off by my father-in-law, she doesn't seem to bless it with pleasure. She continually shares her views on how a good wife should behave, which is exasperating. She has a strong presence among the local women and takes pride in being the representative of the Women's Association and being adored by everyone. She insisted I take time off on a weekday to introduce me to the association members. According to her, it's crucial to make a good impression on these people. She introduced me with a sense of satisfaction, but a few of them commented, "You're going to have a hard time too," implying that she wasn't as well liked as she claimed to be. Oh yes, I was also told to get a bridal checkup to confirm my ability to conceive. I can't deny that I was somewhat repulsed by the fact that it was my mother-in-law, not Sam, who ordered this, but honestly, I was also curious about whether I could become pregnant, so I agreed. Gynecological exams, they're not a pleasant experience. Despite being services for women, I wish there was a way to have them without discomfort. Is it just me who finds the waiting time for the examination while seated on that chair incredibly torturous? Overcoming such pain, the results of my bridal health check were good. I felt relieved at the doctor's words, "You're fine." Sam seemed to be worried deep down, and he looked relieved when I told him the results. Of course, I told my mother-in-law about the medical results. I thought that we could now celebrate our marriage happily, but then she said, "Good, you've passed the first hurdle." The first hurdle? What does that mean? I thought she would be happier. Could it be that she was hoping for a bad result? As I wondered how to respond, my mother-in-law made an unexpected proposal. "Once you get married, let's build a duplex and live together. You'll be responsible for half the down payment and mortgage. You work in administration, right? Your salary is probably low, but you should be able to handle that if you've been working until this age." A duplex? Living together? The down payment and mortgage on me? I was confused by this sudden barrage. I glanced at my husband sitting next to me, but he didn't seem to say anything. Come on, help me out. About living together, I haven't heard anything from Sam. Putting aside the fact that she had slighted my job, I had asked about the duplex and living together first. You haven't heard? Oh, Sam must have thought it was too obvious to say such thing. That's not good. We've always said that when Sam gets married, we'll build a house here and live together. I was chilled. Always? Is she saying that she brainwashed Sam by repeating it over and over? That's right. That's what I had in mind. What? I didn't hear about this. Why are you admitting it so easily? I'm sorry, but I wasn't aware of this matter, and I can't decide without discussing it with Sam, so could you hold off on it for now? Saying that, I left my in-laws' house. Later, when I confirmed with Sam, he said that after marriage, he was planning to build a duplex on his parents' property and live with them. I was angry that I hadn't been told, but he said, "Sorry, I forgot to tell you." I now think I should have decided not to get married at this point. Sam is kind and handsome, and I thought that given my age, I wouldn't be able to meet someone nice if I let him go, and I went down the wrong path. Now, I would surely be furious that he brushed off the matter of living with his parents as, "I forgot to tell you." But at the time, I was charmed by Sam saying, "I'm sorry." I must have been lured by the bait of marriage and had my head in the clouds. As a result, I ended up building a duplex as my mother-in-law wished, and I started married life by bearing half of the down payment and mortgage. Half a year after our marriage, I got pregnant. Just in case, I kept it a secret from my in-laws until I reached a stable period. I thought there might be a chance that something could go wrong. Once I was stable, I reported to my in-laws. Of course, they were overjoyed and were already discussing what to name the baby. They naturally expected it to be a boy, but we still didn't know the sex, so we can't say for sure. There is pressure, but it's nice to be able to make them happy. Taking precautions, I was suggested to quit my job, but since I'm helping out with my family's business, I have a somewhat flexible position. I decided to continue as long as I'm not overdoing it. My pregnancy was going smoothly, and I started to feel the long-awaited movements of the baby. The sensation of a tiny life stirring inside me is somewhat mysterious, yet filled with happiness. I am filled with gratitude for the joy of being born a woman and experiencing this joy. My husband Sam and my in-laws look forward to the baby's growth every time I go for a checkup, and I am eagerly waiting for our child's birth. I have a feeling that my relationship with my mother-in-law will significantly improve once this child is born. One day, when I felt like every day was sparkling, I noticed that the baby's movements were getting weaker. I was consumed with a sense of indescribable anxiety and rushed to the hospital. The doctors told me something was wrong with the baby. Why? How? I was living my life as usual. What did I do wrong? Fear overcame me. Because of the risks, I was hospitalized right away. Despite the doctor's efforts, my child embarked on a journey to heaven. Just a few more months and I could have met my child. Why did it happen so suddenly? It was just yesterday when the baby was moving energetically inside me. Was it my fault? As I cried in sorrow, the words from my supportive husband hit me hard. "How long are you going to cry? It's over, isn't it? Crying won't bring the baby back. Stop crying." I was stunned. What was he saying? Our child has just passed away. Despite being surprised by this cold side of Sam I had never seen before, my shattered mental state left me no choice but to remain silent. Then came the day of my discharge from the hospital. Sam didn't come to pick me up. I mustered a smile and assured the nurses who were worried about me going home alone that I would be okay. When I arrived home by taxi, I was greeted by Sam, my mother-in-law, and an unfamiliar woman. "Welcome back. It's a shame, isn't it?" said my mother-in-law with a strange smile. "Yes?" I responded and took a seat on the living room couch as suggested. The seating arrangement was odd, with my mother-in-law and the woman sitting across from me on a bench, and Sam sitting next to them, not making any attempt to comfort me or make eye contact. Then my mother-in-law spoke. "We've discussed this with Sam, but you can't have children anymore, can you? We don't need a daughter-in-law who can't produce an heir, so we thought we'd have this girl marry Sam." Being confronted with such words when I'm still recovering from the shock of the miscarriage? Tears welled up in my eyes. But I had to stay strong, reminding myself that crying would be admitting defeat. I kept my head down, unable to lift my face. In the face of my despair, my mother-in-law continued mercilessly. "Well, if you are saying that you're willing to earn a living for our family instead of having children, we might consider keeping you. What will you do? Will I be able to support their living if they leave me behind? What on earth are they talking about?" Without thinking, I raised my face to look at my husband. As our eyes met, Sam quickly averts his gaze. Next to him, a woman who seems triumphant is staring at me. I remembered her as Sam's childhood friend. She was introduced to me at our wedding. Seeing that my husband wouldn't even meet my eyes, I thought to myself, he's not on my side, he's not going to help me. A cold breeze swept over me from the top of my head, and strangely my mind became incredibly sharp. During my hospitalization, they must have had their discussions. They are planning to oust me, the woman who can't bear a child, and bring a younger wife into this house to bear an heir. If I stay here any longer, I will only get hurt. There's absolutely nothing good for me here. I finally understood clearly, so I said, "I understand your stance, Sam. Let's divorce. Please live happily with your new wife." And so I left the house. Returning to my family home, my parents, surprised but warm, welcomed me. They were aware of my miscarriage, so they were outraged by the cruelty I had to face so soon after my discharge from the hospital. It was a relief to see a warm reaction after such a long time, and I ended up crying a lot. That day, I fell asleep from crying, but the next day, my mother-in-law and husband, who had chased me out with such cruelty the day before, showed up at my family home. At first, my mother responded normally, but when she realized who they were, she refused to deal with them. Then they began incessantly ringing the doorbell, shouting, "We revoked the divorce! Come back now!" Actually, my family runs a barbecue restaurant. It is a renowned shop that handles a globally famous brand of beer. Many celebrities and athletes come to eat at this tasty place. However, my husband's family is an old, respectable family. They had a negative image of my family, thinking, their family runs a barbecue restaurant. They had this old-fashioned belief that running a restaurant was a shady business and thought our family background was poor. We had invited them to dine once before the marriage, but they declined, saying, "Beef? We've always ate at a designated place. Meat from other restaurants gives me heartburn. Sorry." At the pre-wedding meeting, they indirectly belittled my family with remarks like, "Oh, you run a restaurant, don't you? Oh, from your parents' generation. Oh, I see. Beef, huh? Respectable families don't engage in such business." I felt bad for my parents who raised me. My parents dismissed it with a laugh, saying, "There are people with such mindsets." On the day I left after the divorce, my husband and mother-in-law happened to see our restaurant being featured on TV. They had no interest until then and considered my family lower than them. They had panicked and came to call me back after seeing our restaurant being described as operating its own farm that produces brand beef, having extreme popularity with meat being exported all around the world, being extremely successful and making a lot of money. I felt nauseous when they immediately tried to cozy up to me, saying, "If you were rich, we wouldn't have talked about divorce. I'm sorry for yesterday. We weren't thinking right. Please come back." After all that talk about children and heirs, was it all about money in the end? My husband, Sam, and his family didn't inquire about my job in detail, so I had told them I worked in office administration for my family's company, leading them to believe I was a low-paid, incompetent employee. Consequently, they probably thought that if they asked me to shoulder the down payment and mortgage for the house, I'd give up on the marriage. In reality, I am in charge of the meat export division at my parents' company, earning a substantial income for an office worker. Luckily, I had accumulated a good amount of savings due to getting married later in life, enabling me to prepare the money they asked for. I am also a major shareholder in the company, and I hope to eventually take over my father's position to further grow the company. They had never shown even the slightest interest or asked me about this until it was highlighted on TV, changing their treatment of me overnight. They incessantly talked about wanting kids, but it turns out money was their primary concern. I am simply appalled by their shallowness. My father, who had been silently observing the situation, finally lost his temper and kicked Sam and his parents out. "Thank you, Dad, you saved me," I said. My father, still seething with anger, started drinking and cursing at them. He had me explain everything from before the marriage without holding back any details. Believing I wouldn't be able to handle this alone, my father promptly contacted a lawyer he knew, leading to a demand for damages. Since I was unjustly evicted, we also asked for a reimbursement for the housing funds I had provided during our cohabitation. The claim was acknowledged, and it was decided that I would receive a refund for the expenses I covered. However, Sam alone couldn't repay the loan I'd taken on, so his family home had to be sold. Because they had built a luxurious house on a rural property just for show, even after selling it, there was a considerable mortgage left that Sam and his parents would have to pay. Moreover, it was a house filled with the eccentricities of Sam's mother, so finding a buyer willing to accept it as is seemed doubtful, implying that disposal could take time. Fortunately, they managed to sell some land they owned separately, allowing me to get my money back first, which was a relief. At this point, I was glad I married into a landlord's family. Sam and his parents were forced to leave their beloved two-family home and now seem to be scraping by in a rented apartment, struggling to repay their loan. Oh, and about the woman who was planning to remarry Sam, who was a childhood friend, she was only interested because she thought she'd live in a large house and that his family was wealthy. As soon as she found out that they were going to lose the house and still be in debt, she disappeared. I believe it was the right decision for her to run away, because if she had married him, she might have been forced to have a child, and perhaps even made to work because of her young age. This area is still quite rural, so word spreads fast. For better or worse, gossip is quick to circulate, especially when it involves a well-known family like Sam's. People seem to be buzzing with interest, making comments like, "They treated the wife terribly and drove her out. They used to show off their big house, but now they're in debt and living in an apartment. Having been abandoned by both the wife and potential new wife, their family line will probably end with this generation." It's amazing to see how accurate the rumors are, and to wonder where and who saw all this. The power of a rural network is truly something to be reckoned with. So, it seems like my bossy mother-in-law, who used to strut around like she owned the place, is now sneaking around even to do her shopping, concerned about other people's gazes. My parents told me, "We told you not to marry into a family that would insist on testing whether you could get pregnant before marriage, didn't we?" And shrugged off the whole situation. They even consoled me in a strange way, saying, "Oh, Olivia just rushed into marriage a bit. Don't worry about it. It's fine if you stay home all the time." They try to be considerate in their own way. We had our share of troubles, being kicked out, going to court, but I can tell that they are happy to be able to live with their daughter again. I am grateful for my parents' warmth. It seemed as if I was just dreaming or seeing a nightmare about my married life that I'm living freely now. I might have a divorce under my belt, but I'm still in my 30s. I haven't given up on marriage. Once things settle down, I plan to work hard to find a new partner. But, well, until I find the next right person, maybe I should spend a lot of time doing good things for my parents.
So, you're just a leech living off your parents at your ripe old age, huh, Lily? Leeches should get lost. This is going to be our house.
My 8-year-old niece, Emily, spat out these hurtful words, grinning. My sister Anne and her husband Sam were snickering next to Emily. I could guess the kind of parenting they were doing, given the outrageous statement from an 8-year-old. I no longer feel any need to forgive them, my niece, my sister, or her husband. I felt the pent-up anger inside me flare up. My name is Lily. I live with my parents at our family home. I used to live on my own, but I moved back home because I was worried about my aging parents. I love my work, and I'm not at all interested in relationships. I never intended to get married in my life, and one of the reasons I decided to live at home was to cherish the time I had with my parents. My dad was a chef, and of course, he's really good at cooking. Even after retiring, he cooked for us at home, and I always looked forward to meals. Having experienced living alone, I missed my dad's cooking, which is one of the reasons why I returned home, but that's a secret. When I decided to live with them and support the household, my mom retired from the part-time job she had held for many years. She was hesitant, but I suggested it might be the right time. Both my mom and dad had been doing a lot of standing at their jobs and had sometimes thrown out their backs. I convinced them to quit their jobs, telling them there was no need to push themselves since I was supporting the household. I'm a mess outside of work and I'm not good at housekeeping, so I appreciate that my parents are at home doing chores. It's a win-win relationship between my parents and me. Disturbing the stable life are my sister and her family. My sister Anne and her husband Sam bring their 8-year-old daughter Emily almost every week. They come uninvited, drive 30 minutes to our house, and ask for meals. My sister says,
"It saves on our food expenses, so we come every week. Raising a child really costs a lot of money."
And her husband Sam neither denies nor hides it. They would eat the meals my dad cooked as if it was their right, then leave without cleaning up. That was their weekly routine. Even if they just came, ate, and left, I might have let them do without anger, but my sister's other behaviors were unacceptable. Every time before leaving, Anne would scrounge around our house. She would take things she thought could be sold on an online flea market app. So I've had to hide my accessories and important clothes in the back of my closet. On top of that, she rummages through our fridge, taking food ingredients without asking us. When I told her that would be a crime if she were a stranger, she dismissed me, saying,
"You wouldn't understand, Lily. It's tough to keep a household running when you're married."
But Anne is not the only selfish one. Emily, who inherited Anne's genes, has become more and more like her as she grew up.
Ew, this is gross.
Emily made a sour face at the meal my dad made. Neither Anne nor Sam scolded her. The meal was made by my dad, who's a retired chef with pride. There was no way it could be bad, but Emily complained,
"I can't eat this. It's disgusting. I want cake."
When Sam heard that Emily wanted cake, he turned to me and asked, "Do we have any cake? Emily seems to want some." Even I couldn't help but frown and respond, "Huh?" Sensing potential trouble, my father quickly stepped between Sam and me, apologetically saying, "Sorry, we didn't prepare any cake. Did you not enjoy today's meal, Emily?" Emily seemed rather displeased.
"Yes, Grandpa's food is always yucky. I only want to eat sweet things. Desserts are the best. I don't want to eat Grandpa's food."
"Oh, I find it convenient and it saves us on grocery bills, so it's fantastic. But if Emily says so, we have no choice. Dad, Mom, please prepare some sweets and cake for Emily next week." I couldn't forgive my sister Anne for accepting Emily's selfishness as a matter of course and bossing our parents around. However, if I spoke out now, our already shrinking parents would feel even more troubled. I pitied my parents and, unable to complain that day either, sent off Anne's family as always after they had finished looking through our house. I can't believe the audacity. Acting that way just because it's their parents' house? Unforgivable. Exposing my anger, my mother apologized, saying, "It's my fault for not having the cake ready. I'm sorry," while my father silently discarded the leftover food prepared for Emily. My heart ached at the sight of my parents' actions. I spent the following week contemplating whether I should tell Anne and her family not to visit anymore, only to have them arrive at our home yet again. Without any notice, as if it were a matter of course, Anne's family walked in asking, "Is dinner ready yet?" Emily complained about the cake my mother had bought, saying,
"I prefer one with more strawberries."
Sam changed the television channel without asking. Seeing my sister and her family doing as they pleased as usual, I was flabbergasted when my father's cooking was ready. Anne and Sam were enjoying their meal, chatting, and even sharing a bottle of wine. Emily, dissatisfied with the cake we'd bought and refusing to eat a single bite of the meal, was playing a game on her smartphone saying,
"Grandpa and Grandma are really useless."
As I wished them to leave sooner, Anne suddenly cheerfully mentioned,
"Oh, right. We decided to move into this house from next week."
"Huh?" My voice echoed with surprise, and it seems that my parents, who hadn't heard this before, were equally shocked. Sam supplemented Anne's announcement saying, "It's a hassle to drive here every week. Besides, if we live together, we can save even more on groceries, and we won't have to pay rent." Unable to utter a word, my parents stayed silent, and I finally objected, "Wait a minute. That's quite sudden. We don't have enough rooms, and you're planning to live here without contributing financially? That's way too presumptuous." Anne and Sam's faces contorted at my words, but it was Emily, not them, who rebutted first.
"Lily is an embarrassing adult who needs to move out anyway."
Setting her smartphone on the table, Emily stared at me defiantly. "What do you mean by I need to move out?"
"Lily, aren't you a parasite living off your parents at your age? Parasites should get out. This will be our house."
Emily, sounding smug, received stifled laughs from Anne and Sam. For a moment, I wondered if an 8-year-old should talk this way. I had to do a double take when Emily, all of 8 years old, called me a parasite. Based on the reactions of Anne and Sam, I assumed that they had indoctrinated their daughter to think of me in such derogatory terms.
"No, Emily, don't say such things. It'll hurt Lily's feelings,"
Anne said.
"I don't want to live with Lily. I want her gone by next week. It's embarrassing to live with a parasite. What if my friends find out?"
Emily was looking at me as if I were garbage. Anne and Sam were chuckling beside her. I felt a surge of anger, having endured their behavior for so long. "All right, as per your wishes, I will leave by next week. Rest assured," I responded. Anne's family seemed satisfied with my response. They left, as usual, without helping clean up. My parents looked terrified at the prospect of living with Anne's family, but they were relieved when I proposed a solution. There was so much to do before Anne's family moved in. My parents helped out, and it was a great relief. The house had been tidied up, and the move is complete. Just as little Emily asked, I've effectively moved out of the house for them. The day arrived when Anne's family was supposed to move in. I was busy organizing my stuff in my new place. I missed my old house where I had lived for so many years, but the new place was nice, and I felt a sense of relief, knowing that I wouldn't be irked every time Anne's family visited. While I was engrossed in cleaning, Anne had apparently been trying to reach me on the phone. My phone rang again, showing numerous missed calls from Anne. I picked up.
"Lily, why didn't you pick up earlier? There's a problem with our house."
Anne cried. "Well, it's my house actually. I've already demolished it," I said, half chuckling. Anne screamed,
"What have you done?"
I could only imagine their shock when they arrived to find the house in the midst of demolition. You see, when I had moved back to support my parents, the house was transferred to my name. It was my call to demolish it. I figured it was better to knock it down than let Anne's family take it over. The house was old anyway, and my parents agreed with my decision. I wanted my parents to enjoy their retirement, so I took care of all their expenses. Emily's comment about me being a parasite was, therefore, greatly misguided. I explained all of this to Anne. "You and Emily have said a lot of wrong things about me. It's not good to educate your daughter like this. It'd be a pity if Emily turned out to be like you." I told Anne, my voice dripping with sarcasm. She seemed more shocked than anything else. She'd selfishly run her mouth and then came to me almost in tears asking,
"What should we do? After all, we've already terminated our lease and moved out from our previous house. We're going to end up homeless. Emily is still only 8 years old."
"Maybe it's good for Emily to experience hardship," I responded casually while continuing to clean. Anne started crying.
"How could you be so heartless?"
I thought that should be my line. Who was it that repeatedly insulted me through their own words and through their daughter? I asked her.
"I'm sorry. I'll make Emily apologize too. Please, just for tonight, let us stay in your new place,"
Anne begged. "No can do. Both Dad and Mom are now scared to meet you. You always say negative things. Our new home is fully accessible and they both seem to like it. Please stop interfering with our happiness. I'm hanging up now. I'm busy."
"Wait, please."
Anne was still yelling, but I mercilessly hung up the phone. Afterwards, Anne kept calling numerous times, but I ignored her. It seemed like she also tried to reach out to our parents, but they too ignored her calls. Eventually, the relentless call stopped. Presumably, Anne and her family managed to find a place to stay. When I wondered where they went, my mother explained the situation to Dad and me a few days later. Apparently, Anne had been sending messages to Mom via text only. It seems she's now staying with Sam's parents. Sam's mom, i.e. Anne's mother-in-law, is a very strict woman when it comes to rules and manners, and Anne disliked her. Anne appears to be struggling living under the roof of such a stern mother-in-law. Emily, too, who used to be spoiled rotten, seems to be learning a lot from this strict mother-in-law. There's no doubt she would have grown into a terrible adult if she continued her old ways, so in retrospect, this seems to be a good thing. It may be tough on Emily, but it's unavoidable. I hope she'll manage to become a well-mannered grown-up. It seems Anne and Sam were more broke than we imagined. Sam was a fan of gambling, frequently squandering his money on various bets. Anne wasn't against gambling and didn't stop him, even enjoying it with him at times. However, they accumulated a substantial amount of debt due to their gambling. In order to repay this debt, it seems that they wanted to live with our parents. I was dumbfounded by how audacious their reason was. Sam ended up returning to his parents' house, but reportedly disappeared after a few days. Whether he ran away of his own accord due to being chased by debt collectors, or was forcibly taken away to work, it was unclear. Regardless, since he left a note saying, "I'm leaving home, please don't search for me," the police treated it as a case of him simply leaving home. Anne, without any savings, is now apparently working multiple jobs from dawn to dusk. She's sending daily messages to Mom about her hardships, but it seems Mom has no intention of helping Anne. "We raised her that way, but I think this is a necessary trial for her," Mom said. For your information, our parents and Sam's parents are on good terms and frequently communicate. When Mom apologized to Sam's mom for the trouble caused by Anne and Emily, Sam's mom energetically responded, "Having these kids who are worth educating has added some spice to my life. I apologize for the trouble my son caused. As an apology, I'll make sure to educate my daughter-in-law and granddaughter well." Anyway, my parents and I are relieved to have cut ties with Anne and her family. We're relishing the fact that we can now spend our days without the constant dread and annoyance. Dad, who had lost some confidence in his cooking after Emily's criticism, is now joyfully showing off his culinary skills, thanks to our new house with a spacious kitchen. I've always loved Dad's cooking, and every time I say, "delicious," he seems more motivated to cook. Mom, who used to get exhausted every time Anne's family visited and lost the energy to go outside, is now often going out since we moved. She joined a local club and resumed her old hobby of painting. My mom's forte is watercolor painting. She's always joyfully crafting her artwork under the gentle guidance of her teacher. Recently, she's been heading out to the park, sketchbook in hand, to draw various objects and scenes. We're eagerly looking forward to the upcoming exhibition by the art club my mom is a part of, and we plan to attend. My life continues as it always has. Busy, but enjoyable.
as I continue doing the work I love. The constant nagging from my sister and her family has finally ceased, reducing my stress levels significantly. It wasn't until I felt this relief that I realized just how much stress they had been causing me. It's refreshing to remember just how bright and cheerful I can be. My parents are aging, but they are enjoying their lives now, which makes me happy. Even if they eventually need care, our home is equipped with accessibility features, making caregiving easier. Lily, thanks to you, we are so happy. We truly appreciate it, my mother-in-law often says. My father echoes her sentiments with a warm smile. Indeed, thank you. In part, my devotion to my parents was born from a desire not to have regrets when the inevitable separation comes. However, seeing them so pleased is the greatest reward. I want to continue living this slow-paced, warm life, and will do what I can to ensure our daily lives remain this way.
Speaking of, I wonder how much I've spent this month. Suddenly, when checking my credit card usage, an incredible amount showed up in the transaction history. Upon investigation, it was revealed that my husband had been lavishing gifts on his mistress, taking advantage of my carefree nature. He used my credit card to shower his mistress with whatever she wanted. Cheating on another woman using my credit card? You gotta be kidding me. I will get my revenge. Mark my words. My name is Catherine, 29 years old. Currently, I work as a freelancer. I've always disliked the idea of being an employee, so I chose the path of freelancing, where I could use my skills. I worked hard to get various certifications since I was in college. It was around that time that I met my husband, Bob. Bob and I went to the same college, and it seems he had always known about me. He fell for me while I was studying for my certifications in the college library. He asked me out many times, but I wanted to focus on my studies, so I kept turning him down throughout college. Still, he didn't give up, continued to woo me even after we started working, and eventually, I decided to date him. Afterward, I became a freelancer, and he started working for a regular company. After 3 years of working, we got married, and it was 4 years ago. And now, we lead a somewhat unique married life. Generally, I work from home, but since I was never good at housework, Bob and I shared the chores. Thankfully, I have been getting a lot of work assignments recently. When I was on tight deadlines, Bob would take care of almost all the housework. One day, while I was working in my room, there was a knock on the door, and Bob called out, "Catherine, dinner's ready." "Ah, thank you. I'll wrap up in a bit." "Got it. I'll clean the bathroom while waiting for you to finish." "Much appreciated." "Thanks, Bob." "It's no problem. You're the one earning for us. Let me at least do the chores during busy times." "Okay, thank you." As my husband said, I do earn a considerable amount. Not to brag, but I earn more than triple what my husband does working for a regular company, so I cover most of our living expenses. If my husband pays for anything, it's the occasional dining out. I pay for everything, from the apartment rent to utility bills. Friends who know about our lifestyle always exclaim, "That's unbelievable!" But I never really had any complaints, because I don't have any material desires. I mostly save the money I earn. I work because I enjoy it, not because I want money. So I didn't really mind carrying most of the financial load. And I even felt grateful to my husband, who understood and supported my way of working. Then, one day, while I was working at home, a package arrived. The contents of the package addressed to me was a brand new computer. Given my line of work, a computer is indispensable. I immediately finished setting it up and started working with a renewed spirit. During a break, a thought crossed my mind. Speaking of which, how much did this computer cost again? I bought it last month, and I've already thrown away the receipt. It's embarrassing, but I am quite a careless person and do not have a habit of keeping track of household expenses. I have no clue how much I'm spending each month. To check my card usage, I logged into my card company's app on my phone. Looking at the statement, which I hadn't done in several months, I thought, I'm not spending as much as I thought. This computer, by the way, was purchased with my main credit card. I have another credit card in my name, which is used for daily expenses and groceries, so my husband usually carries it around. I might as well check the usage of that card too. When I checked the statement on my phone, An unbelievable amount was displayed. What? $3,200? What the heck is this? The usage last month was a whopping $3,200. That's twice the price of the computer I bought. I quickly checked other months and found that between $2,000 and $4,000 had been charged in recent months. This can't just be from living expenses. To my surprise, most of the card usage was at high-end stores for women's items. I've never received any luxury brand items from my husband. I had never suspected my husband before, but this is too strange. No way. Is Bob having an affair? The shocking reality made my head spin. Despite the shock, curiosity got the better of me, and I began to meticulously check each statement. Looking in more detail, I found charges from a travel booking site. He seemed to be booking frequently on the site, spending a considerable amount on accommodations. With a sinking feeling, I quickly checked the calendar. Sure enough, a few days after using the travel site, my husband was always going on business trips. I don't want to believe it, but with all this evidence, it's hard to dismiss it as a misunderstanding. How could this happen? Why? With a poker face, was he lavishing his mistress with my credit card? But I guess I loved my husband more than I thought. I just couldn't believe it, and I wanted to deny it somehow. This might just be him fronting the company's travel expenses. Maybe he bought something to surprise me and is hiding it. As I thought of these unlikely possibilities, I tried to deceive myself for a few days. At my wit's end, I needed reassurance and ended up checking his phone while he was asleep. Praying, I opened his messaging app, and sure enough, there was evidence of him getting along well with a woman who seemed to be his mistress. "I'll buy anything for you. My workaholic wife is the one earning it. LOL. Bob, you're the best. I want Louis Vuitton's new bag next. Of course I'll buy it for you. Looking forward to our trip next month, too. The inn we stayed at last time was great, but next time we're going abroad. I can't wait till next month. This time, we're going to take it easy and deepen our love. Just the two of us." The moment I finished reading everything, a surge of indignation consumed me. An array of disgusting remarks, unimaginable from my normally cool husband, Bob, made me feel sick. By this time, my feelings towards Bob had shifted from sadness to anger. A workaholic wife? That must be me he's talking about. A trip next month? Abroad? Just how much can a person ridicule someone else? I thought he understood my job, but in the end, he only saw me as his cash cow. Being taken for granted to this extent, it's unforgivable. If he's thinking that way, well, I have my own idea too. And so, I decided to take my revenge on them. While checking their vacation schedule, I started preparing for my revenge. A week later, to prevent my revenge from being discovered, I was living as ordinarily as possible. Sure enough, when Bob came back from work, he started the conversation with an apologetic look. "Hey, I'm sorry for the sudden notice, but I have to go on a business trip abroad next month." Inside, I was thinking, gotcha. But I responded calmly. "A business trip abroad? That's unusual. You've always been on domestic trips." Well, our company is expanding its business overseas, too." "Oh, really? That's impressive. Being chosen for such an important trip." Well, yeah. Of course, Bob doesn't have the skills to do such an assignment. His company is a small general enterprise, and there's no way it's expanding overseas. As I watched Bob, he brought up this. "Oh, by the way, I'm going to use your credit card for personal shopping during the trip." "I see. I know it's tough to go abroad, but do your best on your trip." "Thanks. Sorry, Catherine, but I'll need you to take care of the payments." At Bob's words, I just smiled, without saying, "Okay," or "I understand." Seeing my reaction, Bob also beamed at me. According to Bob, he doesn't know when the trip will end. He said he would notify me of the return schedule as soon as it was decided. I can't believe he can lie with such a straight face. Almost admiring it, I simply replied, "Understood," and we ended our conversation. The day of his trip, Bob put on his shoes at the entrance. looked at me, and said with a smile, "I'm off." "Are you really going?" "What's the matter, Catherine? Are you gonna miss me?" "It's not like that, but I wonder if you're really going." "It's work. Understand that. I'll buy you a souvenir." Insisting it's a business trip while actually it's vacation with mistress? And still, he was trying to lure me with a souvenir. To him, I coldly responded, "Take care now. Bye-bye." At those words, my husband wore a curious expression, but ultimately said, "I'm heading out," and left our home in high spirits. From there, I began hastily tidying up the house. I packed all my belongings into boxes and shipped them to my parents' place. I had already informed my parents that I was divorcing Bob and would be leaving this house. While my mom and dad were furious with Bob, akin to a roaring blaze, I explained to them that I had a plan for vengeance on my own and would hire a lawyer to collect the money he used on his mistress. In particular, my father seemed ready to vent his anger directly on my husband, but I persuaded him to keep a lid on it for now. A few hours later, "I just landed," came a message from my husband. At that moment, I contacted the credit card company. "I've lost my card and would like to halt its usage," I explained, and the procedure was completed promptly. Now my husband wouldn't be able to use his credit card during his trip abroad. His mistress, who was using him like an ATM, must be frustrated as hell. While imagining that, I received an international call from my husband, as expected. When I answered, he sounded frantic, demanding, "What's going on?" To his panic in question, I intentionally asked back in a puzzled tone, "What do you mean? What's up?" "My card isn't working." "Really now?" "What do you mean, really now? Haven't you heard about any issues with it?" "Issues?" "It's bizarre. I was able to use it to buy my plane ticket." Annoyed, my husband complained, to which I calmly explained, "It's not a glitch. I contacted the car company and had your card stopped." "What? Come on, Catherine. Quit joking around." "Why would I joke about this? Clearly, your card isn't working. Isn't that obvious?" Over the phone, my husband seemed bewildered for a moment, but quickly realized the gravity of the situation. He was so startled that he yelled at me with a volume I'd never heard before. "Stop messing around! I told you I'd be using the card during my business trip. Didn't I?" "Oh, did you mention something like that?" "Why the hell would you cancel it then? I can't pay for my accommodation or buy anything now." "Yup, that's true. But did I say you could use it?" "What? You? Stop messing around!" "In the first place, why should I cover the expenses for your little affair?" At those words, my husband was rendered speechless. He probably hadn't even considered that I was aware of his infidelity. "Why? No, since when?" he stammered, his voice shaking with confusion. To that, I cut in. "Anyway, I'm divorcing you." "What? Divorce? You're joking, right?" Why would I lie about it at this point? I can't be married to someone who cheats. "No! Wait! I didn't mean..." "Whatever your intentions are, it doesn't matter. I've already hired a lawyer, so if you need to talk to me about anything, go through him. Goodbye." As I went to hang up, my husband cried out in desperation, "Wait! Please!" It seemed he had finally caught on an important fact. His voice shaking, he pleaded with me. "What happens if the card is blocked? How am I supposed to get home?" "You finally realized?" "You mean, Catherine, you did it knowing all about it?" "Of course. Did you think I wasn't checking the credit card statements?" "No. No way!" My husband's alarmed voice must have reached his companion, because a woman's voice suddenly shrieks from the other end of the line. "Hey, what's going on?" And desperately, he was trying to calm her down. Just hang on a second. I'll sort this out." "And how do you plan on doing that if we can't get back to Japan? You're going to take responsibility for this. You're totally useless." He seemed terrified at the idea of their relationship falling apart. With a pleading voice, he begged me for help. "Please, Catherine! Please forgive me." "Forgive you? Not a chance." "Don't say that! Please! We won't be able to go back to Japan if things stay like this. You heard her, didn't you? Please, for my sake." "Huh? For your sake? Wow, you've never pleaded like that for me." He prioritizes his own security and that of his mistress over an apology to me. I had lost all patience with him and let him have it with some cold, hard words. Why should I spend my money on you and your lover? It's ridiculous, however you look at it. But blocking my card is harsh. I'm overseas, you know. What am I supposed to do if I can't get back home? What about my job? Are you serious? Before we talk about your job, how about an I'm sorry? How much more do you plan to insult me? I'm not working for the likes of you, you scum. Catherine, please, calm down. Shut up. Just so you know, I won't forgive you, no matter what. I'll make you pay me back every penny you spent on her. I'll do whatever it takes to ruin you. Understand? So just stay out of my life forever, you cheating piece of trash. I hung up without waiting for a reply, blocked his number, and completely cut off all communication with him. Not long after, our divorce was finalized. He was initially resistant to the idea of divorce, but after a stern talk from his parents-in-law, he reluctantly agreed. I heard that after our call, he had a huge fight with his mistress at the airport. It turned out she had other men too, and she dumped him, getting money from her multiple suitors, and returned to Japan alone. Left behind, my ex-husband had no choice but to contact his parents and have them deposit money into his credit card account so he could return home. Word of their affair spread quickly around the office, as she also worked there. Did you hear? Those two were having an affair. He's married too. How could he do that? I heard she's been seeing many men. Seems like it. She moved on to another married man and dumped him, just like that. I have no sympathy for him. As a result, his mistress, a temp worker, got her contract terminated, and Bob was moved to a less relevant position at work. His salary dropped as well, making it a total mess for him. No matter how this turns out, I'm determined to have both of them pay me what they owe me in full. Of course, I intend to recover all the money that Bob has spent so far. I won't hear any excuses for not being able to pay. I'll do whatever it takes to squeeze every last penny out of them. They can regret their carefree affair as much as they want. As for me, I've moved back to my parents' house, and I'm living with them now. Once the issue of the damages is settled, I plan to live comfortably by myself. From now on, I want to dedicate myself entirely to the work I love.
Getting asked out on the day of the summer festival. How romantic is that? I'm Victoria. I'm currently working as an office clerk in a small precision equipment company. When I was 29, David, 2 years older than me, and also from the same company, asked me out during the 4th of July festivities. County fair, exotic fish display, fireworks, and water balloons. He invited me out that day, and I was smitten with David in his casual Hawaiian shirt. However, this was the beginning of my tragedy. Did I agree to date him because I was swept up in the 4th of July mood? Anyway, from that day on, I was in for a turbulent month. A few days later, on July 8th, "We're both old enough. Can I introduce you to my parents? I'm seriously thinking about being with you. I want to cherish it." I was told a lot of words like that. What a sincere person he is. Moved by that, I said, "Thank you. I want to be serious about our relationship too." At that time, I took him as a serious person who was seriously thinking about dating me as a person to introduce to his parents. I was really naive at that time. So, on July 20th, we ended up with a speedy introduction to the parents, bringing gifts and meeting them just 2 weeks after we started dating. It was as fast as a temporary job interview. Everything was going smoothly, in a good way for me at that time, but now I think it was in a bad way. David's parents, who I met, were very nice people. Or so it seemed. "Welcome! Oh, you're even more beautiful than I imagined." "Oh, you're too good for David." Both of them came to greet me at the entrance, and We thought young people might hate boring steak for food, so we bought delicatessen food. Please eat as much as you want. They even treated me to a feast, almost buffet style. I was in a dream. Thank you for such delicious food. I thanked them with gratitude.
But Victoria is also good at cooking. Even though we have a company cafeteria, she always brings her own lunch.
He praised me for being homely, too. No way, he was watching me that closely? It's kind of embarrassing, but it's nice to have someone who pays attention to the details. At this point, I want to slap the old me. But anyway, I was so excited that even being observed about the lunchbox made me thrilled.
Haha, she's such a beauty and can cook, and saves money with a lunchbox. She'll make a good wife,
his father said. This is it. Get married soon, you guys. We seem to get along with her, David. If you don't get married soon, she'll be taken by someone else. At least register the marriage. The conversation even slid to marriage. Even then, I found myself thinking, I'm loved to the point where people might think I want to get married soon. I was ready to dive headfirst into anything, even if there wasn't a visible opening. So here goes, David said.
What do you think? We're both at a good age. We could get along well. I think you're more wonderful than anyone I've dated before, Victoria. I want you to be my wife as soon as possible. I want you to make the lunch you eat in the cafeteria for me too.
Oh, thank you, I replied. Victoria, had so many things to react to. I agreed despite the pink cloudiness of my brain.
Let's do the wedding later, but how about we register our marriage for now? It's sudden, but what about August 8th? My mother says it's a lucky and auspicious date. My parents say we can live together until we find a new home. Of course, we think living together is just temporary until we find a new home, and after that, it's up to us whether we continue living together or move to a new place. You can bring just the essentials for now, and gradually move the rest of your stuff from your house,
he proposed. That's how, after a month of dating, I found myself in the whirlwind process of registering our marriage. My father-in-law said on the bright day,
I'm taking a paid leave. I'll go too.
And even the mother-in-law came along, leading to a large group of us going to the city hall. Then something happened at the city hall. While we were submitting the marriage registration and the female staff member was checking it, David went over to his parents, who were waiting a bit far off. And what conversation did I hear from there? Once the marriage registration is submitted, she's ours.
Now she can't run away. We've got our golden goose.
I couldn't believe my ears. In fact, I doubted them. After all, I couldn't imagine such a conversation from their previous friendly attitude. My in-laws were laughing vulgarly. And then my husband was saying something like,
gotta catch 'em all,
laughing in an equally crude manner. It was a quiet city hall. Their conversation was completely audible to me. The staff member and I looked at each other. Then she glanced at the marriage registration in her hand, then quietly asked me, "What do you want to do?" "Huh?" I asked. "There are no omissions. We can accept it. But what do you want to do?" The staff member quietly moved the documents from her lower desk to the counter between us. "This document decides your life." She said that, then lowered her eyes. I took it and silently put it in my bag. There probably aren't many times when a submitted marriage registration is taken back at the counter, but I would later be grateful for the clerk's quick thinking. When I got home, "All right, Victoria, hand over your checkbook," they said almost as soon as I took off my shoes at the entrance. Huh? I was taken aback. "You are now the bride of this house by holding that document earlier. That means you've become our source of income. Come on, quickly." I took a second look at my mother-in-law's face in surprise. The tone of her voice had clearly dropped. It may have been my imagination, but even her facial expression seemed to have changed. Even my father-in-law said,
"Your mother is right. You're our daughter-in-law. You should listen to everything your parents say."
when you're surrounded by everyone, there is no escape. I had no choice but to pull out my savings book with trembling hands. $40,000. Living at home while single, money does pile up, huh?
For now, let's get some steak today.
They had said before that young people aren't satisfied with just steak. What was that all about? My in-laws gleefully called the steakhouse and ordered the highest grade steak. When the steak arrived, they made me take out my wallet from my bag and snatched it, took out 2 $100 bills, and paid. When the delivery man handed over the food and left, they pulled out all the bills left in the wallet and returned the empty wallet to me, saying, "Here." Huh? I sent a pleading look to my husband, but even my husband said,
"Well, from now on, we share the same wallet. Take care of it. You are good at cooking. From today, you're in charge of my meals and those of my mother and father, and do all the cleaning too."
I felt utterly desperate. David was unrecognizable from the man I knew just earlier today. "The wife can stay in the corner of the house. I've put all of your things from your home there." They threw all of the packages sent from my home into the attic. I hugged the bag with the empty wallet that had all its money taken away from it. Things had turned out disastrously. The steak from earlier didn't taste like anything because I was too terrified. I probably managed to eat only about 2 pieces because I was so scared. I was at a loss, alone in the attic. But the moment I held that bag, I remembered something was in the bag. I dumped out the contents of the bag. It's here. It was the marriage certificate that I decided not to hand over earlier. It was a good thing I didn't hand it over. That was the only sliver of hope for me. I'll definitely use that hope to escape from here. I spent that night in the attic, meticulously plotting. 2 weeks later. "Oh, are we ordering takeout today?" "It's the steak that you and Dad love. I got it 2 weeks ago too, and you both seem to enjoy it quite a lot." "Well, aren't we lucky to have such a thoughtful daughter-in-law?" It was now assumed that I would pay. Last time, I couldn't eat as they had taken the money from my wallet, but today I am going to eat as much as I want. Just as we were waiting, the steak arrived, and I received the large box. "Oh, it seems to be more than last time." The box was 1 size bigger than the previous one. The reason would be understood later. As we sat around the food, dinner began.
The high-end steak sauce is simply exquisite.
"It just melts in your mouth." My father-in-law and mother-in-law were singing praises.
"I'm glad to see Mom and Dad enjoying it,"
my husband said, acting as if he was being a dutiful son, though the money was not coming from his wallet. Then the doorbell rang. Ding dong! "Coming!" I answered the door. "That's unusual, isn't it? At this time? Must be a courier." I could hear my mother-in-law's voice. "Hello there." My mother had arrived. "Huh? What?" With a puzzled expression as if caught off guard, my in-laws and husband looked on as I invited my mother to the table. I thought I'd have my mom join us for dinner today, especially since it's such high-end steak, I said with a smile. My in-laws and husband seemed perplexed. They didn't know she was invited. I suppose they didn't have a reason to decline, though. Awkwardly, my father-in-law and mother-in-law cleared some space, into which my mother came and sat down. "Well," she began as she picked up her utensils while everyone else continued their meals. "I brought what I was asked to." "Thank you, Mom," I replied. My father-in-law seemed to feel bad.
"Oh no, we can't accept this,"
he mumbled, probably thinking it was a hostess gift. But what my mother brought out wasn't a gift, but an envelope. I took it, pulled out a piece of paper, and started reading it out loud. I decided to play my trump card. I didn't submit it. Boom! I thrust it in front of the 3 of them.
Seeing it, the three of them opened their mouths in surprise. I said I did not submit the marriage license. I held up the paper lined with red ink, taut in both hands. It clearly stated the submission date of August 8th.
Why? But we went to the office.
I heard my mother-in-law's raspy, strained voice. Because I heard you. Once the marriage license is submitted, she's ours. In the conversation that went, she can't escape now. That's why the office worker stops me from submitting it. Now I'm really glad I stopped. And then, the paper I held taut, I slightly adjusted its position in my hand and ripped it up in front of everyone.
Oh!
My mother-in-law let out a scream with her mouth still open. The sound of the paper tearing echoed in the room. My mother-in-law's wide-open eyes were vacant and pitiful. So much money. My father-in-law also let out a dry voice. I tore the paper into tiny pieces, crumpled it, and stuffed it into my bag. I picked up a piece of steak from the table, put it in my mouth, and savored it before swallowing. These steak bills, I'll leave them here with the other invoices. Let's have our last supper. Were we tricked? My husband, no, the man who is now nothing to me, screamed. Then,
who's the one who deceived who?
A roaring voice shouted back at him. It was my mother.
The one who tried to trick my daughter with a marriage license was you. Before you blame others, be ashamed of what you've done.
The momentum silenced everyone. My mother continued.
It's easy to imagine and horrifying to think that my daughter was being oppressed by you three like this. I made the right choice coming here today. If she had been alone, you three might have forcefully taken the marriage license she had.
I'm glad my mother came. I noticed that my hands were trembling slightly. By this point, I was a complete stranger, not only to my in-laws, but also to the man and woman standing over there. My fake in-laws and husband would simply have to accept the harsh reality of the costs for the purchased items they would have to shoulder. All three of them were so disheartened that none of them even felt like eating the steak. But I was in a different mood. I ate as much steak as I could fit into my stomach, making up for what I hadn't eaten previously. It tasted like victory, and it was absolutely delicious. My mother also ate quite a bit, but there was still leftover steak. Then,
can we take the leftovers?
My mother asked, pulling out a Tupperware container she had brought with her. I chuckled a bit, thinking that she had planned this from the beginning. Sure, it would be a waste to leave it here, I responded. I went to fetch my suitcase from the attic room. Then, goodbye. Thank you for having us for the past 2 weeks, I said as my mother and I got into our car and drove off.
Really, you've had a rough time with this, haven't you?
My mother commented from the car.
We must be more careful. We rashly agreed to your marriage without considering the timing.
My mother said that from inside the car. After that, of course, I spread the news of David's and his family's outrageous behavior around the office. Word got to my boss, who was appalled and questioned his character. As a result, he was transferred to our company's only branch office in Kyrgyzstan. It's odd that our only branch is overseas, let alone in Kyrgyzstan, but the country is thriving in precision machinery production, so our company has a branch there. It's a place so far away, it's known as a dead-end job within our company, hence its nickname, Ghost Station. A place where one ceases to exist. With him being sent off to the Ghost Station, he naturally had no ties to me anymore. As for his family, they were unable to pay for the invoices, and despite borrowing money from payday loans, they eventually had to flee in the night. The following year, during the summer festival, I peeked into their property, and it had been turned into a parking lot. It's a parking lot, huh? It sure is a parking lot. I stood there, taking in the sight with my new boyfriend. Shall we go to the festival? Sure. My new boyfriend was just in a t-shirt and jeans, but it's way better than a Hawaiian shirt. Looking forward to the fireworks, I held his hand.